The story begins with a dreaded criminal named Frank Moraes, who was being sent to a high-security prison named El Catres. The El Catres prison was built on an island in the middle of the sea from where no prisoner had been able to escape till date. But Frank was famous for escaping from jail. He had escaped from many jails till date, but no one had even thought of escaping from El Catres, let alone doing it. On reaching the jail, Frank was thoroughly searched first, after which he was sent to his cell, where he was now given a cell to hide his body. He had to spend the rest of his life there. The next day at breakfast, Frank met an old prisoner named Litmus, who kept a OK for a briefing where the warden threatened him and told him not to try to escape from here because who knows how many people like him have come and gone. There were no charges. He could not escape, and during the warden's speech, Frank stole a mail cutter from his room, which was a very small thing, but he knew that in a prison like prison, even a small thing can be very useful, and that is why Frank hid the nail cutter inside the Bible as soon as he returned to his cell. After a while, during the group shower, Wolf again came to Frank and started teasing him, and this time Frank was not in a mood to ignore him, and he caught Wolf and started beating him, and this behavior of his got him into trouble in the jail. This gave him a reputation within the prison, and after that, no one would mess with him without a reason. Over time, the prison library turned into Frank's second home, where he met the prison librarian named English. English was also serving a life sentence in Alcatraz, and because of this, he had lost all hope of getting out and was deeply absorbed in books. In fact, both English and Frank had a passion for history books, which is why they became close friends. During this period, Frank also met a man called Doc. Frank encountered the prisoner, who was an exceptionally talented artist, dedicating most of his time to painting. Doc believed that in a perilous place like Prison 1, anyone could lose their mind, and it was this prisoner's habit of painting that had maintained his sanity up to this point. That evening, the guard informed Frank about a potential job as a carpenter, which would also provide him with 15 cents per hour. However, troubles were about to escalate for Frank, and on the day when all the prisoners were released from their cells, Wolf 1 made his return. But this time, he was armed with a weapon. He also had a knife with which he wanted to attack Frank, but at the last moment, Doc alerted Frank, after which Frank stopped that attack with the help of his jacket. Now a fight broke out between Wolf and Frank, and when the guards tried to stop them, Wolf attacked the guards as well, after which both of them were sent to the solitary confinement of D Block. In solitary confinement, the prisoner was kept alone. This was a cage where no prisoner wanted to go, and now Frank had to stay in this cage only to save himself. He was extremely upset that he had to leave due to the cage situation. After being confined to the same cage for a full 2 weeks, when Frank was finally released, Litmus sent a warm welcome note to cheer Frank up through his rat. Upon returning, Frank also befriended his neighbor Charlie, who was serving time for a significant theft there. Charlie confided in Frank that he deeply regretted fleeing by crossing the border, as this mistake had only magnified his crime. The following day, the warden made an unexpected decision to visit the prison without informing anyone in advance. During this time, he saw his picture in the prisoner's cell, which he initially liked very much. However, in the very next moment, he ordered all the paintings made by Doc to be thrown out from the jail. This decision completely shattered Doc internally, because his paintings were his lifeline. He cherished every single one he created. Frank tried countless times to console Doc, saying it was just a painting and that he needed to live in the present. Unfortunately, Doc couldn't overcome the shock, and one day, during his shift, he passed away. 3 fingers were cut, which was a kind of rebellion against his warden. As soon as this happened, the guards immediately sent a message to call the doctors, and on the other hand, Frank was standing quietly and just looking at the dock. That night, when Frank was sitting in his cell, he saw a cockroach coming out of the vent, seeing which Frank realized that maybe this vent is the way to some door leading out. Then English told him that actually the warden had removed all the paintings of the dock because he did not like his picture. The next time while eating, Frank met 2 brothers named John and Clarence, who recognized him from his previous prison visit, and now during their conversation, they were talking about how it was impossible to escape from this prison, because the prison was surrounded by water from all sides, and now, according to them, they would have to spend their entire life here. But their conversation sowed the seed of a new idea in Frank's mind, and now Frank wanted to make history. He wanted to become the first person to escape from this prison. During the night, Frank began to weaken the cement surrounding the grill in his room using a nail cutter that he had stolen from the warden. Whenever he heard the guard's footsteps approaching, he would quickly hide the nail cutter inside the Bible and pretend to read it to avoid raising any suspicions. Over time, his diligent efforts began to yield results, and gradually the cement around the grill started to weaken. Meanwhile, when English and Lee went for a visit with their family members, English felt very hesitant and uneasy about talking to his daughter because his daughter had grown up in his absence, and English was very sad about not being able to see his daughter's childhood. Meanwhile, while meeting his wife, Charlie came to know about his old mother's deteriorating health, and according to the doctor, Charlie's mother had only a few months left, and this thing created a desire in Charlie's mind to escape. The next morning during breakfast, Frank presented his plan to escape from the prison in front of John and Charlie. According to Frank, salt water and air had weakened the prison building, due to which they can remove the ventilation grills by scraping the cement, after which they will reach the pipeline through those grills and escape from there. But the matter was still stuck there. They will escape from the jail, but how will they cross this sea? On this, Frank said that Clarence works in the clothes department of the jail, so he can steal raincoats and some rubber cement from there by doing 11. With the help of all this, I know how to make lifeboats and life jackets. Trust me. Everyone liked Frank's plan very much. Charlie came, and all of them decided to work on this plan together. That night, Frank was busy extracting cement in his cell like every day, and this time, Charlie was also with him, who was keeping an eye outside his cell so that no guard came to know about their plan. Frank's work was getting done, but due to the nail cutter being small, it was taking a lot of time and effort to operate it. The nail cutter was not very sharp, so a lot of force had to be applied, and due to this, Frank's hand also got hurt a lot, which was now troubling him a lot. So the next morning he told everyone about this problem, and now according to him, they needed a bigger and more powerful weapon. But then Frank's eyes fell on his spoon, and he immediately rubbed his spoon on his shoe and made it dirty. After which, he called the guard and complained about the spoon being dirty. The rest of the people also supported him and requested the guard to change the spoon. The guard also did not find anything wrong in this, and he easily agreed to change the spoon, and as such, when they went to the front desk to change the spoons, John engaged the guard there in his conversation, taking advantage of which Frank put one extra spoon in his pocket, and this was not enough for him, and that is why he collected the rest of the stuff in exchange for his share of 20 days of sweets with litmus. After which, Frank melted the spoon and joined it with nail cutter and coin to make a new tool, which proved to be much more effective than the nail cutter. That night when Frank was busy scraping the cement quickly, then one guard came there on whom Charlie didn't notice, but fortunately, our English intervened and distracted the guard, giving Charlie a chance to alert Frank by hitting the jail bars. When Frank got the signal, he quickly hid everything. They were safe this time, but Frank realized he couldn't fully trust Charlie. In the following days, Frank discovered that screws were tightened inside the grills, and they needed a new tool to open them. During this period, whenever Frank had a chance to go outside, he would hide his belongings in the jail, so he would quietly throw out the cement taken out from the grill. While working at the carburetor shop, Frank secretly prepared a small tool, and to take it out of the shop, Frank had to hide it from the metal detector, and for this, he kept a rotten piece of iron in his hand, and when the metal detector alarm went off, Frank gave the same rotten piece to the guard while his real tool was in his shoes. As soon as he reached his cell, he opened the krill with the help of that tool, in front of which there was a network of pipelines. A fake hairpiece was set up, potentially leading to their freedom, but Frank realized they needed a better plan. So, they decided to create a fake head to trick the guards. They quickly gathered materials. John's task was to collect hair from the barbershop. 4 was to get lip paint, and Frank gathered newspapers with English's help. Once they had everything, Frank got to work right away. He started by pasting the newspaper on the wall. They made a structure of a human skull by mixing cement extracted from the pipeline and applying paint and hair on it. They were going to fool the guards. To make his plan stronger, Charlie made fake nets that looked like the grills, which he was going to replace the grills while running so that no vehicle would notice that there was no grill there. One night, Frank decided to go up alone, for which he used that fake skull and fake grill, but after reaching the top of the pipeline, Frank saw an iron door. He couldn't reach alone until then, and at that moment, the guard was doing rounds of all the cells. When he got close to Frank's cell, he grew suspicious. Despite this, they managed to escape, realizing changes were needed in their plan. The next morning, Frank and Charlie discussed the incident from the previous night. By then, John and Clarence had also crafted their fake skulls, and everyone agreed to proceed with the same plan. That night, John and Charlie went behind the same iron door again. They went closer, and with each other's help, they reached the door, and as soon as they caught hold of it, they realized that they could cut the door, and for this, they needed some advanced tools. The next day during the music class, Charlie saw an old fan, and as soon as he saw it, he felt that they could use it as a tool, and hence he made a deal with Litmus in exchange of his share of sweets. Now, to take the fan out of the class, Charlie put it in an instrument box, with the help of which they could easily take it out. They emerged from the prison. As soon as Frank got a hold of the fan, he promptly began crafting a tool from it. After finishing, they returned to the iron door. This time, using their newly made tool, they managed to cut through the door. During this process, they caused a lot of noise, the sound of which reached the guards. However, the guards didn't pay much attention and simply ignored it. At this point, Frank and his companions had forged a path, leading them to decide to make their escape from the track of the world's most secure prison on Tuesday night. Yet, on Tuesday morning during breakfast, Frank placed a flower on the table in memory of Frank. The warden immediately noticed it and crushed the flower while reminding Frank of the prison rules. Litmus was the most angry with this behavior of the warden, and as soon as he moved forward to attack the warden, he suddenly got a heart attack and fell down. After a while, the warden suddenly searched Frank's cell and did not find anything there, due to which he was very angry, and in this anger, he took a step and ordered to change Frank's cell. Wolf also got angry. Frank was released from solitary confinement and ready to confront Frank once more. However, as he advanced, the English intercepted him. That night, Frank, John, Charlie, and Clarence planned to meet in the pipe, but Charlie got anxious and opted out. The other three proceeded with their plan, while Charlie's hope for freedom slipped away. Meanwhile, after passing through the door, Frank and John couldn't meet in the pipe. Frank and the others got to the roof and had to dodge the searchlight. Meanwhile, Charlie decided to escape the prison and raced through the pipeline to the iron door. But he couldn't get through alone, losing his chance at freedom due to fear. Meanwhile, Frank, Joan, and Clarence avoided the searchlight, reached the prison wall, checked for anyone nearby, and quietly crossed the wall to escape. Now, all three of them carefully crossed the road and eventually reached the seashore. They were well aware of their individual tasks and responsibilities, and each one of them was performing their work with a sense of calmness and efficiency. They began the challenging task of filling air inside the boat, which was quite difficult to do by mouth. Nevertheless, in order to save their lives, all three of them persevered and managed to accomplish it. Now, they embarked on their journey into the sea, determined to leave the border of one trace behind forever. The next morning, when the guards came around for their routine check, at first glance, everything appeared to be perfectly normal to them, and then he saw how long Frank was sleeping. When he removed the sheet from Frank's face, the ground slipped under his feet. Today, something happened he never imagined. News spread through the jail that some prisoners had escaped. Frank had placed a fake skull instead of his head. The guards raised the alarm, and it was soon known that 2 more prisoners had escaped. The search for the 3 began, using boats and helicopters. But, despite this,